Hi guys, and welcome back to City Skylines. In this episode I want to talk a bit about the Let's Play itself, but before I head into that, just want to give a small introduction of what I actually do in this episode game-wise. I decided to just make a couple more living districts in the style that I already had, and also kind of experiment with Dutch flat blocks to see if I can actually make some neighborhoods with that in the future. And also try to set up a business park alongside the highway to see how that would actually go. But the main thing I actually want to talk about in this episode, and the reason why I'm actually re-recording this episode as well, is the fact that the last video, that is the first video of this series, actually got posted on the Netherlands subreddit, which was the last thing I ever expected of any of my videos to even happen. But it was posted by somebody by the username Galim, so thank you for that, because as a result, the video got a lot of attention from people who know more about Dutch city building than I do, which is very good because I got a lot of useful feedback and suggestions from that thread. The only thing is that I can't really do much with it, since the first 5 episodes of this Let's Play were actually recorded in the Christmas vacation, and when I decided to lock myself up in my room all alone and listen to music and play City Skylines. So I can't really do anything with these suggestions as of yet. I'm very happy to have them though, and I'll start actually trying them out and changing the city eventually and tweaking some small or major things based on suggestions that I get. The same goes for YouTube comments, by the way, but I can't really do it as of yet. So the first 5 episodes are all already predetermined, and you can still give feedback on them, but keep in mind that I'll actually go into tweaking this city based on that feedback in episode 6. Or maybe a little later, but episode 6 is where I'm currently at as I'm speaking, so that should be alright. But yeah, this episode is really not too special so far. Just continuing to build the city in the sort of way that I envisioned so far. I wanted this entire part of the city to be this more modern Dutch look, which I suppose you either hate it or love it. I for one, I'm not too big of a fan of this style, because as much as it is actually fun to make it, and it looks cool from the ground, it's very repetitive, and the row houses are very repetitive as well. It's a pretty boring style to live in, but it's the sort of road pattern which is very popular in the Netherlands for newer areas, so that's why I wanted to get that in here. And I'll actually branch off into the other road styles at some point in the future. So far the only real ways in which I've done it is in this more modern style and the infamous cauliflower style, which is the a little bit older style from the 70s and 80s, where most roads are just completely squiggly and kind of confusing. Or at least that's the bad, way too short story for it. The long story will come in the episodes when I actually get to that. But so far I sort of wanted to continue building the city in this way, since it's a very easy way to get things done, and you don't really have to worry about too many other things like standalone houses or curved roads, because you don't really have it too much. Much of this type of layout is actually quite straight, just not in the grid-like way that most American cities are, but it's a very easy style to build, I think, so that's why I wanted to start it off like this. Also wanted to get a little bit into foliage over here, as you can see, and also these little paths on the side. I have to admit actually, and this is probably the worst thing that I could have done, that I don't actually have the After Dark DLC, so I don't have the bicycle paths. I'm planning to get it, but I have been planning to get it for the last couple of months, and I still don't have it, and I should probably get off my lazy bum and actually get it, because especially for this type of city, it's probably necessary. But for the moment, I'm just kind of using those pedestrian paths that you just now saw to at least emulate the sort of idea of having these bicycle lanes next to the roads, which you see around nearly all of the roads in the Netherlands. And something to come back to actually is that in last video I talked about 2 main types of roads in the Netherlands, which was actually almost right. I didn't really base that on any theory or anything. But it turns out that the Netherlands actually makes a distinction between 3 different types of roads, which is very similar though, where they make the distinction between the very small roads that you use to actually move around inside the living areas with the row houses. Then there's the more transport connecting roads that actually connect parts of the city, and then the more outside roads like highways or national roads and things like that, which actually can connect cities. And you know, as you just go steps into this road system, you can drive faster, but you also have less services along the roads. That's the sort of idea that you have. So yeah, I got that right, I suppose, in the overall way in which it works somehow, but it wasn't entirely exactly the way that it's used in real life, so I'll try to actually use that in the future. And that's actually where I think the main difference is gonna be from episode 6 onward, because so far what I was doing was really just emulating the Dutch style of road building, but to be very honest, my understanding wasn't too large. It was really just experience from Google Maps, a bit of Wikipedia and road wikis, and real life of course, but not too much going into the theory of building roads itself, which is something which I do plan on getting into after episode 6, and that's why I also want to start tweaking some little things. There are definitely some things which I either forgot or procrastinated that are very Dutch elements to cities that I don't have yet, like I'm not going to spam small shopping malls or shopping streets in the next 5 episodes, which is something that I should have done in hindsight, just to make the city look a little bit more Dutch. What you often find in Dutch cities is that each of these living areas, each of these small row house neighborhoods, they usually have one small shopping center in the middle of them, with like the basic sort of shops, so maybe 1 or 2 clothing stores, a supermarket, and some really necessary things like a bakery, which is something which I didn't do yet, so that's something that I want to get back to and tweak in episode 6, and also spamming schools is something which I should have done in hindsight, but it's really that sort of thing which I want to move back to in episode 6 and look back on what I can improve in the city. And this over here actually is where I try to get that flat block neighborhood in, and I was pretty much forced to actually use these ex-communist flat blocks. There are multiple flats on the workshop. You don't actually get these flat blocks in the game itself, but the ones on the workshop are pretty good, but they're all sort of from ex-communist countries, which is one of the main issues that I have with it. So even though it gets the shape and overall form of the Dutch flat blocks in there, it still looks very much like it is from a communist country. There's just not too much I can do about that. I'm just gonna have to roll with it and see how well I can actually make it look Dutch. The only real thing that I have to say to myself in hindsight of building this little flat block over here, just to test what sort of buildings I need and how I could set it up a little bit, is that I should probably set it up a little bit wider and have the flats further apart from each other, and definitely have a couple of parking lots here and there, which I actually forgot at that space. Now over here is where I actually wanted to get the business park going, but to have it in this entire road part over here would be a little bit too large, so I figured I would actually have a small living area still next to the business park, and sort of divide this space into 2 parts and have the row houses on the left and have the business park on the right next to the highway. And that's why I quickly wanted to still fill this in with houses. This is also something which I might change a little bit in the future, if only just because the transition from business park to housing area right now is very, very sudden, and there's no real transition between them. And that's something which I do wish to get in the future, maybe just put a small park in between them and go from there. Oh, and some feedback that I would just now like to talk about last video is that the time-lapse is actually very fast. The first episode, and this one as well, because this one was already pre-recorded, and I removed the original video files because they're way too large, are still at 12 times the speed of the gameplay, which is very fast, and I've actually got a couple of people saying that it's a little bit too fast, and I spin around a lot. And I don't think I'll change the letter, since I just like to play the game this way, and sort of pretend that nobody's watching, and just moving around makes it easier to see how things would actually look. But I will slow down the time lapses to about 8 times the regular gameplay speed, I think. If that's still too fast, you can always sort of leave a comment about that, I suppose. And I'll see how I can change it. But this video is still the last one that's gonna be quite fast and move around a lot. So if it makes you dizzy, I'm sorry about that. I'll try and adjust that for the future. I'm sort of used to Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, I suppose, in which I at least move around a little bit less, because there's not because there's a lot more that you have to do in the UI with that game, which is why I'm sort of used to speeding up gameplay 12 times, but I'll see how much I want to slow it down for this game. And this over here is actually a good point to come to as well. This is the theme manager. For anybody who doesn't know, there's actually a mod using which you can create your own themes and put buildings into certain themes. Then you select a district and say what theme the district should have, and they automatically get only buildings of that theme in that district. So that's how you kind of get those row houses automatically. The row house is actually on the workshop with the models and the theme in one bundle, so you don't have to actually make the theme yourself. But when it came to this business park over here, I wanted to make sure that I only got the office buildings that I actually wanted to get in there. So that's why I wanted to select the buildings myself with the theme manager and just make it a little bit more easy to get the exact buildings that I wanted. Granted, in the end, it still took me a lot of time to actually get the exact buildings that I wanted, especially without getting repetition, because I wanted to avoid having these same buildings all over the place. I mean, eventually, when it comes to the entire city, you can't really avoid having the same building spammed multiple times all over your city, since realistically there just aren't enough models in the game or even in the workshop to get an entire unique city. But I want to come as close as possible and at least keep the same buildings as far apart from each other as I can, just to create the illusion that every building is a unique building. So that's why I wanted to mess with the theme as well and remove buildings as soon as it was a building that I already had, in a way. And the last thing that I wanted to do over here with the business park is actually add a little bit more foliage to it. And that church as well, since I figured I wanted to at least add a bit of scenery to it and not leave it completely empty or make it into a complete forest. Foliage is also still something that I would like to return to on later occasions, especially when it comes to adding ground shrubbery or making the forest a little bit more dense at some places. But over here I just wanted to get a bit of simple foliage in the sort of business park way, not too dense, and a couple of different trees and some ornamental foliage as well, and decided to actually place some rocks in there eventually, just to be a little bit more of a scenery touch. It was actually quite hard to find the exact sort of scenery that I like. The thing which I could have done, honestly, is to actually use fences as a ornamental scenery item throughout the city. But the way that fences work in this game is just quite painful. They don't snap to each other, so you kind of have to rotate them exactly the way in which you want. And they also have a hitbox that's larger than the fence itself, and it's kind of a bit too annoying to work with, I think, to actually use it in this case. So just wanted to quickly add some rocks in there to make it a little bit better. And especially when it comes to these roundabouts, I just love adding little foliage and scenery touches to roundabouts, and get some unique scenery to each roundabout. But yeah, that's pretty much about it for the time-lapse. I didn't have any real-time footage recorded for this episode. I won't have that for too many episodes, to be honest, but I figured that instead I would actually get these flying camera route shots here, so you can kind of see what the city looks like, especially from the perspective of the city itself. This is also why I think the graphics are actually pretty good, especially with the sunray and ambient occlusion and dynamic resolution mod. This, by the way, is that road which sort of functions as the main nerve of the road system in the city, where I want to attach all the roundabouts, which should eventually be able to actually hold all of the traffic which goes to the city. So far, speaking from episode 5, in which a large part of the city is already finished, I don't have too many issues with it, so I'm really not too worried about having these roundabouts over here and their capacity. I think they're large enough to sort of take the capacity that they need. Also, what's funny about these buildings over here actually is that I didn't have to replace these buildings at all. They came out in this perfect color scheme of brown, brown, green, green, red, red, and like they did that out of themselves. I actually didn't have to replace any of them, which is the biggest coincidence. I actually was planning on getting it exactly this way, and I just randomly placed some zones over there, and I got it exactly the way I wanted to, which was actually very funny. And I have no idea what the odds are on that, but I'm sure they're pretty small. And then this is what the living areas look like from a aerial perspective. and you can see the tree render distance kind of glitch over there, which is annoying, but I do like the way this looks in general. Anyway, that's it for this episode, so thank you guys for watching, and have a good day, I suppose.